Another week, another episode of the A-List Podcast. I'm Kwani Lunis, joined by Sherrod Blakely, Gary Washburn. Hello, friends. Haven't seen you in so long.
How are you doing, Kwani? It's been a minute.
I'm doing well. It's been a whole week. I can't believe it.
I know. It's been a minute. I mean, we got you in the club. We got Gary Washburn, a.k.a. Run DMC 2.0 over here. Okay.
Yeah, for those that are physically watching, I am actually in a club right now because the podcast never stops because there's always something to talk about when we're talking about these Celtics. And of course, right now, the big topic, Jaylen Brown reportedly being offered up by the Boston Celtics for the big name Kevin Durant. What were your reactions when you saw that report from Shams and Woj, even though there are other conflicting reports that was an older deal and it might not be as legit as people are complaining about on Twitter?
I'm going to let Gary, you jump in on this one first. You jump in.
I just don't think anybody should be surprised at this point. I think the Celtics have done their due diligence, called the Nets about Kevin Durant, as all the other 29 teams have. And I'm sure, I don't think Brad Stevens was dangling Jaylen Brown and saying, hey, we got Jaylen for you. I think that the Nets probably brought up Jaylen Brown, and that's where a potential discussion started. And I'm sure they've asked, well, what would it take besides Jaylen? And that's probably the sticking point here. And I'm not saying they're willing to trade Jaylen, they're going to dangle Jaylen or Jaylen's on the block, but it's his Kevin Durant here. Why wouldn't the Celtics make a phone call to figure it out? And it's their decision whether to make a deal. Players are meant to be traded. I mean, every player in the history of the league almost has been traded before. Anthony Davis, we can go back to Kareem got traded. Everybody's been traded. Like this whole thing of these dudes getting offended by being on trade talks. And I'm not saying Jaylen is, but I think that's overblown. I think he's probably like, wow, I'm just chilling in August. It's almost August and my name is still out there, but to me, I think it's not anything close to happening, but I think that's what the Nets started with. Well, we're going to need Jaylen first, and then we'll see what else we want on your roster. Now, did the Celtics say absolutely not? No, I think they'll probably say, well, let's see what happens. Maybe their price lowers. Maybe the Nets get desperate once training camp begins. Maybe Kevin Durant says, I ain't playing a game for y'all suckers. Like, y'all can trade me or I'm going to be a disgruntled cat. Like, who knows what happens? Because right now, in late July, there's nothing to be urgent about. You don't need to make the deal. Kevin Durant's, the season doesn't start for almost another 3 months. So why is any side in a hurry? Except if Kevin Durant is telling them, trade me as soon as you can, because once training camp begins, I'm not reporting.
The thing about this whole situation is that we have to remember a couple of things. First and foremost, from the Celtics side of things, Brad Stevens has been pretty deliberate about the way he goes about handling his business. If he wants to get a deal done, if he wants a player, he's going to be like, look, this is the guy we want. This is what we're putting on the table. Let's get this deal done right now. He's not all about that player marination, letting players marinate out there in this sea of indecisiveness and Twitter rumors and all that stuff. He's not about that life. He is about getting the deal done right now, which is a little bit different than Danny Ainge. Now, the one thing him and Danny Ainge, and as Gary pointed out to every other GM in the NBA has in common, is that when a player of Kevin Durant's stature openly becomes available to be traded for, you damn right you're going to pick up the phone and find out what that other team wants. Because Kevin Durant is one of those once-in-a-lifetime type talents. When he's done playing and you start talking about the top 10, 15 greatest players to ever play in the NBA, he is going to be in that conversation. He's that good. He's that transcendent a player in this league, and he deserves those flowers when the time comes. But if you're the Boston Celtics, the way that you've gone about putting your team together, the way you've gone about constructing this thing, Kevin Durant would be a very desperate move for a franchise that has shown no signs of being desperate. I mean, think about this. Your pillars are both 25 and under, already been to the finals, have been to 3 conference finals. And when you start looking around the landscape of the NBA, Ain't nobody had the kind of success that those cats have had this early in their careers and have been, again, the forefront of your team going forward. So to me, if you're the Celtics, it makes absolutely perfect sense to check in and see what his value is. But it does not make a lot of sense to put anything of value on the table. And the deal that we've heard about that the Celtics offered that was rejected, which would have been Jaylen, Derek White, and a first-round pick, I honestly think if Brooklyn comes back to them, they might not even get that. Celtics might not be even willing to give them that, because if they came back later, the Celtics aren't going to increase their offer by no means, because there's no incentive to, because the team they got right now can compete for a championship. And Kevin Durant, he might help you, maybe, but that's a lot. There's a lot of question marks about whether or not Kevin Durant can come in and significantly make your team better than it already is now. If we had this conversation maybe 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, different conversation. I'm going to go chips all in on Kevin Durant, because at that point, Jaylen Brown had not had the type of resume to where you could stack it up to a guy like Kevin Durant and look at the age and say, yep, Durant has done more. But what about going forward? How much more can we expect in this head-to-head matchup going forward? And you just look back at, what happened in the first round of the playoffs where Brooklyn got swept. Jaylen Brown more than held his own against Kevin Durant for the first 3 games. Now, the last game, Durant went off. Durant was giving everybody buckets, everybody. But the first 3 games, Jaylen more than held his own. I think Durant shot maybe 33%, 40%, something like that from the field when Jaylen was guarding him. Averaged 5 points against Jaylen throughout that series. And this is a guy that dropped 26 a game in that series. So Jaylen in the head-to-head matchup has clearly shown that he's closed that gap some. And when you look at where Kevin Durant is in terms of age, you look at where Brown is in terms of age, it's hard to think about giving up significant assets for Kevin Durant that it would include Jaylen Brown.
So with that being said, do you think they're playing with fire for the fact that report was even able to leak? That feels like tricky business, as you both saw. Jaylen Brown tweeted, shaking my head. And of course, all the radio heads are over-exaggerating what that means, but he sees the reports just the same way that we do. And now that could mean trouble in paradise.
Well, the thing that the Celtics have to be very concerned about is that you don't create a situation where the minute he gets a chance to bolt, he's going to. I don't think that's necessarily the case here. I think the shake my head isn't like, I can't believe the Celtics are actually putting me in rumors with Kevin Durant. Think about that for a second. There's the possibility that you might be traded for one of the greatest players to ever play the game. Now, I don't know. I can understand why you might be a little bit offended, but Jaylen, I think we all agree, is a really smart guy. And I think Jaylen's smart enough to realize that the only people that you should ever even contemplate being in thought of in terms of trade talks are the Kevin Durants, of the Kawhi Leonards, the elite players in the NBA. Those are the players that when you hear your name brought in rumors, just like, that's some respect. That's not them move. That's major respect. Now, I'm not going to get into any specific player names, but there's some guys that if you were to say, let's trade Jaylen for that dude, it's like, I don't know about that. Like, I'll just give you another Jaylen. We'll just stick with Jaylen's. Jalen Brunson, good player. I love him. But if you talk about making a trade for him, hell no. Not even trying to hear that. There's a lot of guys in the league. I would say 80, 85%, maybe 90% of the league consists of guys that you would not seriously think about trading Jaylen Brown for. And Kevin Durant is just part of that talented 10%. If I'm Jaylen, I'm not upset. I mean, I'm going to keep doing my underwater workouts and get myself ready for the season. That's all I'm going to be about now. If anything, I'm going to use this as added motivation and incentive to shut up anyone who thinks this is a good idea. And I think that's what Jaylen will probably do.
Another perspective, though, is I don't think enough people have mentioned this. If that trade were to hypothetically go through, I think one of the biggest things that we've seen in Boston is that Jaylen constantly gets compared to Jason Tatum. And it's like, who can be the star on this team? And I guess the silver lining for Jaylen would be the fact that if he were to go to Brooklyn, he could potentially be that star and be that go-to guy. I know Ben Simmons is there, but I'm not really seeing him as a star. But I think Jaylen's talent, and he's proven to have the track record of being that guy, he could potentially get that opportunity in Brooklyn.
Yeah, I think that's a possibility. I mean, I think there's no question that Jaylen would love to be a A1 player along. And I think with Jason, that's possible. I think we saw in the finals, until he proves differently, that Jason does need some help. Jason is not going, he ain't LeBron 07, he ain't LeBron 13, he ain't LeBron 16, where he's put, hey, fellas, let me carry you to the finals championship. I'm going to carry this team. If Jason had been even average in the finals, the Celtics would have likely gone to at least 7 games with the Warriors, right? And they would have had a winner-take-all game 7 in San Francisco. If Jason was even like 60, 70% of what his capabilities were, instead of maybe 30 or 40 at times in the finals. Jaylen was the best player on the Celtics in the finals. I think we all know that. Everybody else had their moments. Jaylen was the one balling. So I think Jaylen understands that. But here's the thing, too. Jaylen also wants to win championships. Jaylen also wants to I think he likes Boston. I think he likes the fact that the Celtics took a chance on him in the draft, the fact he got a nice extension from the Celtics. I think, his heart is in Boston. I don't think it's one of those like, well, y'all gonna put me on the block, get me out of here. Now, what does Brooklyn have to offer? I'm sure they could say, hey, a primary role, a chance to be in New York, all that good stuff. But the Nets haven't won nothing. Like this since they moved to Brooklyn, they haven't been to the finals since they were in New Jersey in 2003. So like, are they gonna promise Jaylen? Now, if the Nets said, hey, and we're gonna max you in 2 years, then we're talking like, okay, Jaylen maybe thinks about it. But to me, I think that he's good with his role in Boston. I think he knows, just like Jason does, he has to hit the lab, work on his ball handling, work on his free throw shooting, work on those little things to make him an elite player, and then he can take a step toward being a perennial all-star, and him and Jason can really lead the team back to the finals. Because if both of them do what they're supposed to do this summer, not vacationing and white parties with Draymond and all that, Jaylen doing his water thing, his Bruce Lee thing, which is great. That's encouraging. I want to see some Jason work. I want to see some video from Jason doing something like crazy, athletic, in terms of working out, doing something, running hills, Rocky IV. I want to see Jason doing something besides it out. It's great, but I think people want to see, okay, folks, this is what I'm working on. If both of them just improve slightly from this year with the additions they made, they can get back to the finals. So if you're the Celtics, you really, really have to think about this. To me, the Durant deal has to put you over the top. Does the Durant deal, if they give up Jaylen and probably another significant player, I don't think the Nets are like, oh, give us Derek White. They're going to say, we want Marcus, right? We want Marcus. And they probably say, hey, throw Peyton Pritchard in there. He's a good little young guy that throw somebody young in there. And so are you willing to part with that? Does that make you a championship team with 2 primary scorers? But do you slip defensively? Does Kevin Durant play in 70 of the 82? Like, all that you have to ask if you're Brad Stevens.
Well, we've talked about how the Celtics need to figure out who the next man up will be and how they're going to figure out their roster for next season. But I actually think our sponsor would work well for the Brooklyn Nets as well, because they're trying to figure out how to get their business rolling. And no one has the proper tools for your business like Indeed. So Brooklyn Nets, if you're listening, Indeed is hiring. I love Gary hates the transitions, but I've embraced them because instead of spending hours on multiple job postings and scrolling through candidates, Indeed is your one-stop shop for all your candidate needs. You can basically go online, put in what you're looking for, and they attract and find the best people for your job. And Indeed just makes it easier to hire. It takes about 10 minutes or less for most small business owners to post a job, according to Indeed data. So all you have to do, you can start hiring right now with $75 off with our code Indeed.com/A-list. And all you have to do is go on the website, A-list, Indeed.com/A-list. You'll get that $75 credit towards your first job posting. And then you'll be able to find your next Kevin Durant. So Gary is not happy with me at all. But okay, let's play hypothetical because that's what we love to do in the world of sports and basketball. What would a Kevin Durant, Jason Tatum tandem look like? Or should we even talk about that? Do we want to talk about that?
Well, it looked pretty damn special at times to have two guys that on any given night, no one on your team can stop. No one on your team can guard. It puts defenses in a very tight pickle because you've got to give significant attention to them in a way that you don't have to do most teams. But my concern isn't so much about just the scoring and the stats. My concern has a little bit more to do with just Jason Tatum's overall growth. We have seen him exponentially grow into the role of being that dude, being the man. And yes, as Gary pointed out, he did not have a good NBA Finals. There's no getting around that. Had, I think, more games that weren't great than games that he did great. But I worry about his growth, not necessarily leveling off, but not progressing the way it should when you have a guy like Kevin Durant around. We saw how Tatum was when he was around Kyrie. We saw with Gordon. We've seen him with other superstar players early on in his career where he seemed to be a little bit hesitant or reluctant to be that dude. In the last couple of years, he's been that guy. Will he continue to be that guy, or will he revert back to the Jason Tatum we knew when he played with another top-tier, unquestioned superstar? That's my biggest concern about that pairing. But considering what it would likely cost the Celtics in order to make that happen, I'm not comfortable with that pairing because I just don't think that they will be as strong both in terms of depth, in terms of talent, and in terms of mental toughness when you take away some of the pieces that I know Brooklyn would absolutely have to have in order to get this deal done.
Yeah. I mean, I think of how many tandems have you seen that one guy is 34 and the other is 24? Like, that's a thing that also be a bit concerning. I was told by an executive long ago that you don't want to pair up an aging player with a young player like that and make them your dynamic duo. Now, it can happen. You know, we've seen, let's say, for your old schoolers in a sense, Duncan and Robinson, right, where they were about, 8 or 9 years apart, but it was obvious like Duncan was emerging and Robinson was on his way down, but they both combined together to combine for some championships, right? But David did take a step back because it was like, he was already like in his 9th or 10th year and after coming in from the Navy, and then here comes a young Tim Duncan. So it can be possible, but can they play together? If they play essentially the same position, but this is a positionless game now. Who are each player going to guard? Who's going to do the dirty work? Which one of them is going to rebound? Like, and I'm not downing Durant. I think Durant's a marvelous player. I think it would work out. Like, I think, no question, they would make it work because they're two basketball savants, dudes who love the game. They would make it work. But when you think about Kevin Durant, you also got to think about, one, like, how do you make him happy? Remember, like, he was the man in Oklahoma City. Then he decided, I want out. Okay, I don't want to play with Russ no more. So he goes to Golden State. Everything's going well there. They're winning championships. He gets hurt. He gets into it with Draymond. Nope, I want my own team. I'm going to go to Brooklyn sight unseen because my boy Kyrie is there. Now, 3 years later, I want out of Brooklyn, even after signing a 4-year extension. So how do you know that Kevin's going to be there for the entire 4 years? He's not going to ask out again. You have to ask yourself that as the Celtics, if you're thinking about this deal. What makes Kevin happy? Like, I think Kevin's a dude that we've gotten to know over the years as a brilliant player, but a dude who just doesn't seem very happy off the floor in terms of, like, he's trolling on social media. Anybody says something negative, he's just responding. He's not been good. I covered Kevin as a rookie with the Seattle Supersonics way back then when Sherrod was on the Pistons, and Kevin was a great kid. Raised well, a wonderful young man. Thank you, Sherrod, for taking that.
I feel like there was a young person joke in there, but
I didn't
it's okay.
even mention Kwani.
I know, that's the point.
I didn't even mention that Kwani was like in high school.
Exactly, that's the point.
I didn't even mention Kwani was like in the 10th grade. Anyway, so And he couldn't have been a nicer kid to cover. Like, he was just a nice kid. He just wanted to hoop. He was 19. I was around him all the time. I mean, it was a fun to cover him, and you knew that he was going to be a superstar, even though literally he was 186 pounds, soaking wet, or whatever, at 6'11", and he was playing a shooting guard. But obviously, he's hardened over the years, personality-wise. He's hardened. He just doesn't seem to enjoy things outside of basketball as much as you'd like him to. So who's to say that one day he's not going to go up and say, I want out? Or we didn't win a championship our first year. I don't like what's going on here. Like, you just don't know. Deal with the person, to me, who's one rising, Jaylen Brown. You know that Jaylen's not going to stop working. You know he wants to be great. You know he's a dog. You don't trade dogs in this league. You just don't. You know Jaylen, remember, he came into the league, couldn't shoot, right? Worked on his mid-range, worked on his three-point shot, worked on his handle. His handle's gotten a little bit worse, so I'm sure he's working on that this summer. Work on his free throw shoot. Like, he's got weaknesses, but this is a dude who's 25. He'll be 26 on opening, near opening night. Like, he is entering his prime. Like, I don't know if you move away, because I think he makes you pay if you do. I think, okay, I got you. I see y'all at the Garden when I come back here. See y'all drop 45 on your ass. Like, I think Jaylen is one of them guys that the Celtics might regret. Now, if you win a championship out of it after the first year, okay. But you best know when you make this trade, you're a much better team than you are now.
So that being said, you kind of answered this, but I imagine you wouldn't be willing to throw Marcus Smart into a trade for Kevin Durant as well. Obviously, that'd be a package.
Hell no. But hell no. Because if you were to do something like that, you just Danny Ainge yourself if you do that. Because Danny Ainge, when you look at the deals that he's made with Brooklyn, I can't remember the last one where he didn't hoodwink, bamboozle, and lead them astray. He does it every time. He either gets the best player or he gets the best draft picks, which lead to the best players. So, including Marcus Smart, to your point, Kwani, that will come back to bite you, because you better believe Marcus Smart's best games of the season in which you trade him will be when he plays you. He will drop 25, have like 6-7 steals, have a plus minus of like plus 25, and he'll just leave you thinking like, damn, we traded him for what? Don't do it. Don't do it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think with Brogdon present, it's easier to trade Marcus. I'm not saying trade Marcus. I think it's a little easier now that you've got Brogdon for a couple of more years on his deal, and it all depends. And you would clear some playing time, and you just that means you have enough belief in Brogdon where it's like, okay, Malcolm, you're our guy at the one position. Okay, to me, I'm just more about trading Jaylen. I think Marcus, you can trade Marcus. I don't think you should trade him if you don't have to. But I definitely don't think if I'm the Brooklyn Nets, I'm taking Derek White. After the season he put in with the Celtics at $17 million a year, I'm like, no, you gotta give us Marcus. We ain't taking Derek White. That's real. Thank you, but no thank you. I think in the sense Derek White has to be better and more consistent. I think it's NBA Finals after that game one, he disappeared. So if I'm Brooklyn, no, I'm not doing that. And so you have to look at the Celtics assets. Who else do they have to offer in trade besides Jaylen? Peyton Pritchard, you traded half your bench to get Brogdon. Aaron Nesmith, you moved him. So you can't even say, well, he's a guy who was a prospect that didn't quite work out here, but hey, maybe he'll do it in Brooklyn with a new environment. They did that. They pulled that on Indiana. So Pritchard, Robert Williams, or they already got Nick Claxton. So and they already just re-signed Nick Claxton. So you're not getting both of those guys. Williams is pretty much untouchable. So who else do you have to offer? That's the thing about some of all these assets they can trade. Jaylen and kind of somebody, let's not get carried away with all the assets. They have draft picks, but they don't have a loaded roster to trade with disposable good veteran players to trade Brooklyn. Like Derek White, I don't know. I don't think so. You ain't trading Robert Williams, especially when they already have a big that they like. So who you talking about besides Jaylen? Marcus. I mean, that's the most feasible deal. If I'm Brooklyn, I'm asking the Celtics for it. That's why I understand people, the Celtics have the most assets to offer. They have the best player to offer. But I don't know about the most assets in terms of players.
So we're going to go around the NBA. We're going to start with fact or fiction. And this question, fact or fiction, you answer it. Donovan Mitchell will be a New York Knick by opening night. Fact or fiction?
I'm going to go with fact. I'm going to go with fact because Danny Ainge is motivated to move Donovan Mitchell. Danny Ainge is looking for his another team to hoodwink, bamboozle, and lead astray. And if you go and look at the fact that the New York Knicks have had like the worst record in the NBA over the past decade, they look like a pretty ripe partner to get a deal done with. Now, will it be tricky? Absolutely. Will a third team be involved? Most likely. But I do think that Utah will find a way to scorch the earth on that franchise, get rid of Donovan Mitchell, get a bunch of draft picks, and just basically we'll have a draft where it's pretty much Oklahoma City and the Utah Jazz picking every player. Because they're going to have all the damn monopoly pieces between now and in the next 5 years. So I think they will get it done. I think the Knicks will find a way to make that happen, and Danny will get another treasure trove of draft picks.
Yeah, I'd say true. I'd say the Knicks have done a good job in the last month acquiring draft picks to make these types of deals. Now you got Jalen Brunson, and now and honestly, they've drafted well over the last couple of years. Emmanuel Quigley is a nice, good, solid player. Quentin Grimes is emerging. Jericho Sims, the big athletic kid out of Texas. So as much as we rip the Knicks and they deserve to be ripped, every possibility, they have put together in the last 4 or 5 years a little group of good young players. Mitchell Robinson is a good young player. Like they've put together a good group of young players through the draft. They've drafted pretty much, in some cases better than the Celtics. And so you can offer those young guys and draft picks to get Mitchell. And now you're going to have to figure out, okay, you throw in Fournier into the deal because you got to match the salaries because remember, Donovan's on a more of a max deal. So you got to figure out the money. But I do think that the Jazz, I don't know if they're trying to build around Donovan Mitchell at this point. I think that's probably what Danny's asking right now. In his brief time with Utah, is this a guy that I want to build around? I've already traded the big man. I've already shipped off Gobert to Minnesota. What do I want to do with him? And do I want to start over with a bunch of prospects, draft picks, young players in Utah, where you're not going to get free agents, so you got to grow your players. So do I get Quigley, Grimes, Sims? Do I get 3 young guys and grow them to be great players on my team and build? Because if you look at the last great Utah teams, or whatever teams you've been pulling out, those players have been drafted. Stockton and Malone both got drafted, and Darren Williams and Carlos Boozer. You look at pretty much they don't really sign free agents like that. Danny understands that. So I think he works out a deal because I don't think he feels like he can build around Donovan Mitchell.
Well, Gary answered this last week, so Sherrod, you can answer this. Fact or fiction, Russell Westbrook will be an LA Laker on opening night.
That would be fact. Why? Because they ain't going to find nobody foolish enough to take on that damn contract. They're going to try, and I'm going to be good try, good effort. Good try, good effort. But they ain't going to get no deal done. Westbrook is going to be a Laker. That's simple.
Simple answer.
And I hope LeBron has a great time.
We'll see about that. All right, let's go pick and roll. You pick a player and explain why you're rolling with them. Who will start training camp in better shape, James Harden or Luka Doncic?
You got it, Gary.
Luka's already in shape, playing for Slovenia in the summer in the Euro Championship. So I told this last week. I ain't betting against James Harden. I'm just not. Like, I think he still has something left. I think he's motivated. Now, will he ever be what we thought he could be? And will he ever probably get back to Houston Harden? Maybe not. But I think that there's too many people who are just considering him trash. I mean, I think that's a sad part about the league that we cover, my peoples, is when you lose it, Twitter, the basketball Twitter, you trash.
No mercy at all.
No mercy. Like Russell Westbrook 3 years ago, MVP. Now
Calling the man Westbrook. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he got rookies in the league making fun of him. And dudes ain't played one NBA game making fun of him. Like James Harden, one of the most prolific scorers in our generation, a dude who's just an instant bucket. Now he's trash. Like, this league is unforgiving. And let's not talk about dudes like Blake Griffin and those guys who have really lost something. Like, it's an unforgiving league. I feel bad for some of these guys, even though they make millions. I don't feel that bad for them. But
me neither.
Basketball Twitter is unforgiving. And it's sad that you trash. Like, gosh, all these dudes aren't trash. James Harden is not trash. Okay? He might have slipped. You can't age in this game. I know that. You cannot age in this game. This game, once you slip, basketball Twitter is on your ass. So I still believe in James Harden. I think he'll come back in good shape, but I think Luka's already in shape, so I'm a bet on Luka.
Okay. Let's see. I'm rolling with James Harden on this one, and simply because Harden has left money on the table, which he never does before. That will add to his motivation. Harden is at a point in his career where he's sick and tired of the trolls. People troll him every year because of that weight issue. And he's too good a player to have one thing that continues to keep him from being his all-time best, which is his weight. He literally works his way into shape during the season. And at some point, he's got to get it in his head that, you know what? I'm going to put the trips to the South Beach to the side just for a little bit. I'm going to put hanging out with whoever and whatever, anything, all times of night. I'm actually going to care about my body and get it right before training camp so that when I go to training camp, I can hit the ground running instead of huffing and puffing and hoping that, man, I sure hope I get my stamina back by the time we get to the All-Star break. Luka, however, is going to be a beast this year. I think James Harden will be in better shape, but Luka is going to be a beast this year.
I'll just say this about James Harden. Okay, I believe in James, but that whole giving money back, that's some BS. First of all, he had a $47 million option, right? 1 year, he opted out and took 2 years, $68 million with a player option for the second year.
So he left about $13 million on the table for 2 years, Gary.
Sherrod.
He's so generous, Gary.
If he's trash.
In that man's heart.
Yes, exactly. If he's trash, okay, this year, ain't nobody signing him for. So basically, let's say he played $68 million. So let's say he played, okay, for 2 years. Let's say, hypothetically, he played this year for the $47 million option. He picked up his option and he has a bad year. Is any team signing James Harden for $21 million next year?
Yep.
Somebody spending $21 million on him? That fool is getting the mid-level. Like, he is not getting 21. If he has a bad year, like he look out of shape, he's not getting 21 more million.
Let me ask you a question, though. That ain't going to happen, and you know it.
No. I'm saying everybody's talking about James is like he Mother Teresa and Gandhi at the same time.
Oh my God.
You forgot about Pope Francis. You forgot about
and the Pope giving money back. Stop that. He took 68 over 2 with a player option, which means if I'm not good this year, I'm just going to pick up my option and get another 34 next year. Like, that's not a deal. That's the like Sherrod. If he's terrible this year, he's just like, I'm just going to opt in.
Well, Gary,
Like, that is not a doing somebody a favor.
Gary,
Sherrod, don't do me no favors like that ever. Don't do me no favors like that.
Also, it's our relatives because we're talking millions. Like, it's above our pay grade.
Yeah, I'm just saying this whole like, oh, he gave money back. What a great guy to like. No, he took more money next year and less money this year. He just shifted his money.
So like, Gary, let's stick with your narrative for a real quick minute, and then we'll move on. Let's assume that he's the complete opposite of what you described, and he's James Harden from Houston. That's going to look like a steal. Am I correct? He
opts out, Sherrod. He opts out and then signs for $47 million. It's a player option. It ain't no team option. Sherrod, he got
so in other words, he's going to save Philly money this year.
James,
and potentially they're going to have to pay him back next year. James
Harden is from LA. That's an LA move. I love him. We went to the same middle school. Not the same time, obviously, but with the same, that is an LA move.
So that's something Gary Washburn would have been pulling in middle school.
Exactly.
Stealing the kids' lunch money.
Sherrod, if it was a team option, I would understand. That fool got a player option. So if he is Houston James Harden this year, he goes, oh, remember that money I gave back? No, I need to recoup that. Like, run that back. Run me my money. So give me my 2 years and $94 million. Give me my 2 year $94 million since I became Houston Harden again. That is not a gift.
Gary,
like, let's bring that in on the Mother Teresa. He is not Desmond Tutu. Stop it. Nelson Mandela.
Nelson Mandela in the building, y'all.
Stop that.
Oh my God.
He is
Nelson
not that kind.
Mandela in the building, y'all.
He is not that kind. Stop. James, that was a great thing he did for himself. I get it.
And the organization.
The optics look good, but just think about it. If he's trash, he opts in.
If he's trash, he still got you 20-6.
He opts out, and he gets 47.
Gary, he's going to get the payday regardless because a bad James Harden is still better than 80% of the league.
Yeah, he gets his money back if he's good.
He don't got to be good to get his money back. Bad James Harden is better than 80% of the league. That's why I'm saying what he did is absolutely sacrificing because even when he sucks, he's still better than 80% of the league.
His reputation is taken. If he opted in at $47 million, had a bad year, he'd be like right behind Russell Westbrook. Russell Westbrook is not getting let's see what happens this next summer when Russell's a free agent. Let's see how much Russell getting $10 million. He'll get the mid-level exception.
Maybe.
Yep.
Maybe.
He'll get 1 year at $10 million. He gonna be on that DeMarcus Cousins train where you get less and less and less and less. Like, so let's see. Like Harden right behind that with another bad year. So let's chill on calling Harden, a saint here. He ain't sainthood yet. He ain't St. James yet.
He getting my vote for Nobel Peace Prize for
okay.
That's my
guy.
If
you're watching this on YouTube, drop in the comments.
Nobody need to get him a Medal of Freedom. Come on now.
Anyone that's watching on YouTube, drop in the comments. Do you think Harden sacrificed for the people? Is he a saint? That's the way to end the pod.
Bring it back.
Once again, we want to give some love to our sponsor or Indeed.com/A-list for your promo codes, discounts, sign up, get some benefits. And thanks for listening. As always, I'm Kwani Lunis, Sherrod Blakely, Gary Washburn. This is the A-List Podcast.
James Harden, free James Harden.